Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 8 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about dope. And no, we are not talking about the illegal kind. We are talking about data of previous engagements, what that means to you, the shooter, how to get it right, and the common problems that are plaguing today's shooters. So stick around. We hope you enjoy the show. And here we go. All right, so let's talk about dope and getting real dope for your rifle. This is a really big deal. It's a topic that I'm excited to talk about here, to share with you, try to give you some ideas, as well as it is creating a huge problem for us as shooters, and even bigger problems for new shooters. So where do we start? Let's talk about what DOPE really stands for. And let's talk about what our goal is while we're trying to achieve getting this information for our rifle. And then let's talk about ways that we can do it properly and ways that we can get it right. So right out of the gate, DOPE stands for data of previous engagements. No secret there. And really what it goes into is, for many, many, many years, long-range shooting isn't something that just come out of the blue over the last, 5 or 10 years. People have been shooting at distance for a really, really long time. But, back in the day, there wasn't, commercially available chronographs. There was all these other things that, there was no program or app in the 80s and 90s to get dope for your rifle, at least not for, us normal folks. What we would do is we would go out, and we would at least maybe try to get a speed for the rifle. But I'll be honest with you, I've gotten lots of dope for rifles many, many, many years ago where I didn't even own a chronograph. And so what I would do is I would take and I would shoot at 100 yards, get a good zero. I would shoot at 300 yards, do the calculations of how many minutes I needed, and then I would do a wild guess at 500 yards and shoot at paper. And then I would calculate up what I need to score a center hit at 500 yards, and then I would start working everything in between. And the whole time I am writing this information down. So dope is something that you get after you shoot, not something you get to shoot. And so all of these programs that you're seeing out there, and I don't want to name any names, there's tons of them out there. You guys know what I'm talking about. So like Hornady, Sierra, the programs in the wind meters now. You can't just get a couple pieces of information and plug that in there and go and shoot at distance. It's not going to work. And then I think what's even hurting more shooters than anything is the fact that they really don't have these programs ironed out for all the other variables that get involved, and that will cause you tons of headache in the field. So let me give you an example. We have a couple guys that I shoot with regularly. They're sort of new to the game, 3 to 5 years experience, and it's not that bad. And they are, for all intents and purposes, really smart people. 3, 4, 5 years into this, the very last range trip led into a half an hour conversation on this new update that came in this program that they're using. And how this needs turned off, this needs turned on. Oh, this wasn't calibrated properly. And so every time they go to the range, their dope is off a little bit. And it's like become a topic at every time we get together is how to keep this thing running properly, or how to fix it, or this new update messed with this, so you got to go in and fix that. Talk about being in a high maintenance relationship. Guys, I just want to go out and shoot. And more importantly, I'd really like to hit what I'm shooting at. This whole technology thing that's wrapped itself into our shooting world, which is being sold as a way to make that part easier, is actually making it way more complicated. It's introducing things into the program or into the dope that's wrong, that's causing you to get bad information and miss a lot of distance, either high or low from a day-to-day basis. And it's making the whole experience, rather than less, enjoyable. So when you go out and you shoot at distance, you want to get all of your stuff put together and you want to go and shoot. The last thing I want to do is, I don't know if y'all are old enough to, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen that 8-ball or whatever it is that you shake and you ask it a question and you look inside and it'll tell you the answer, that magic, whatever it is. Well, that's what I picture happening while people are twirling their wind meter around, walking in a circle for 30 seconds, and then taking 5 minutes to scroll through a screen. And let's not forget that we don't have this turned off, and we got to take a snapshot to get our... Oh my God, you're just getting dope for your rifle. At this point in your shooting career, you should just be getting on the gun, looking at your dope and shooting. This should be like a 10, 15-second process, not several minutes of scrolling through screens and trying to get information and twirling this around so it's the proper air. Oh my God. What I'm going to try to share with you is the problems, and then I'm going to try to share with you how to fix it. Again, our goal is to go out and enjoy long-range shooting and actually hit the stuff that we're shooting at. So let's talk about some of the problems and why these programs are really just not quite up to snuff yet. And I can say this from experience. More than 11 years of teaching the shooting school, more than 20 years of shooting competitively. I mean, I just love everything that we do, right? But I've watched these programs come on the line, and I've watched, as they dial in distance, the amount of time that they're taking to get their dope in whatever program that they're using and updating this and can't see this screen and all this time that they're wasting. And then when they're shooting, they're missing. They're missing high, they're missing low, they're missing high, they're missing low. And this is on a day-to-day basis. So I'll go to the range with a certain group of people, and they're really confident that, oh my gosh, man, my dope is working perfect. And then the very next time we go out, it's off again. It's off again. And so it will drive you crazy as a shooter. I call it shooter's insanity. I am going to try to help and keep you from getting in that to begin with. So here's what happens, and there's a couple of things that get involved. And I think I talked about this in a previous podcast, that we have a curvature of the bore of the rifle. So, when that indexes on the barrel, you have an artificial either elevation, or you could be artificially dialed down or left or right. So technically speaking, your bullet isn't actually leaving perfectly straight in line with the optics. That right out of the gate causes some issues. And then also you have some fluctuations. We talk about the BCs, the ballistic coefficient that the factories give you. They're a lot better and closer than what they used to be. But let's face it, everybody's trying to nudge that number up a little bit. And in some cases in years past, they've padded these numbers to really outrageous numbers that weren't true. And then they backed them back off after shooters shot them at distance and could verify that there's no way that this ballistic coefficient is correct. And then we've got our bullet speed that we have to get. So when we're trying to establish, or getting dope for our rifle, especially here at the school, we will chronograph the rifles. We'll get a lot of information from the rifle. For example, we want the scope height, center of the optics to the center of the barrel. We want a speed. We want the ballistic coefficient. We want the bullet weight and manufacture. And we're going to put all of this into a program. For example, like the Hornady program that you can use online. It's free. And then we're going to print out a click chart, and we're going to issue that to the students as a starter chart. And I always tell them that this is a starter chart, and I say that for a reason. Though mathematically correct for all the information that we put in there, so we could put in the altitude, we could put in the barometric pressure, we can put in the temperature. It's mathematically correct on their program. These things will vary slightly with your rifle and rarely holds perfectly true. So the nice part about these programs is that they sort of fast track us from the old school way of getting dope of just shooting and walking down and measuring, recalculating, coming and shooting again, and trying to walk the bullet into your perfect, 300-yard dope and 500-yard dope and 1,000-yard dope. So they help keep us on paper, at least get us close right out of the gate. So they sort of fast tracked us. But we still have to get the actual dope for our rifle. And so we have to shoot at distance. And we have to verify, what our rifle needs, not what we think it needs. So, for example, like we talk about this in class, when you're getting dope for your rifle, we're going to take that starter chart out, and we need 2 reference points right out of the gate. If you have a range that's 500 yards, you want to take 300 and 500. If you have a range that's 700 yards, maybe do 400 and 700. If you have a range that goes out to 1,000, shoot at 500 and 1,000. And what we want to do is we want to put up a nice blank piece of paper with a really, really clear bullseye in the middle at 500. And we want to do the same thing, let's say for 1,000. We're going to make sure we have a perfect 0. We're going to fire a really nice group at 500 yards and a really nice group at 1,000, writing down what our click chart said we need. And then we're going to go down range and we're going to measure what we actually hit. So, for example, let's just say we're shooting in mils and you went down at 500 yards and your click chart said you needed 3 mils and you only needed 2.8. And you go out to 1,000 and your click chart said you needed 8 and you only needed 7.8. So it's 2/10 off or 3/10 off or whatever distance. You're going to take that information now and you're going to go back to the computer and you're going to manipulate it to get the bell curve in line. That's our whole goal of getting good dope for our rifle, is we can go back to the computer, and this is sort of what we've taught in the class in years past because there wasn't a lot of great programs out there that were super accurate. And so I would tell students, what you want to do is you want to go back and you want to start with the scope height, and you want to play with the scope height that you put in there ever so slightly. Now, keep in mind these are small adjustments, but let's just say our scope height for our rifle when we measured it was 2 inches. Well, we could back that down to 1.9 and hit calculate and see if we're closer to what our rifle truly needed, if it's moving us closer to what our dope is. And if it is, we could adjust it a little bit more, which is say 1.8 inches, and we got a little bit closer. So we're going to make small adjustments to try to get the click chart to say what we actually needed, not what it thought we needed. The second step is we'll adjust the ballistic coefficient ever so slightly. And all we're trying to do is to get those 2 reference points to line up with what our rifle said we needed. So let's just say, for example, we needed 2.8 and 7.8. That's what we need to shoot center target. So we can go in and we can raise the BC from, let's just say, for example, our BC was on the box of the bullet said 0.647. Or we could raise that BC to 0.655. Or we could lower it if we needed to bring our bullets up or down. But you can play with the BC ever so slightly on that bullet and hit calculate and see if it's moving you closer to what your rifle needs or further away. And so you can make small adjustments there. And the last thing that we adjust, at least this is what we've done old school to get dope for our rifle, is let's just say, for example, you really do have curvature to the bore. It's starting your rifle artificially in up position, whatever the combination of the roughness of the barrel. There's all kinds of variables get involved in this, but you really do need a fair amount of more dope or less dope. And you played with the scope height and you played with the BC, and it still doesn't get you there without really going overboard on exaggerating those numbers. Then you can start adjusting the speed ever so slightly. And so usually with the combination of those 3 and small adjustments, we can get that bell curve in line at 500 and 1,000. And then it's going to hold true for quite a bit afterwards. So 11, 12, 1,300 yards. And this is how we've done it. And it works great. When you go to the range, the only thing you have to pay attention to is either the density altitude going up or down or the barometric pressure. And once you have all this information in the program, or the corrected chart, you can just plug in the new density altitude and see what it does, or you can plug in, the barometric pressure and, see what, 1 point up does or 1 point down does. And so the reason I tell you this is if you shot your dope on a day where the density altitude was 3,000 feet, well, now you can go into your click chart and you can put in, with all the variables now locked in solid, and just change that number to 4,000 feet or 2,000 feet and hit calculate and see what difference it makes to your rifle. So at 1,000 yards, it makes 1/10 of a difference. So you can add 2,000 feet to it. So you say, okay, well, we did our baseline at 3,000 DA. We're going to bump that up to 5,000, hit calculate, and oh my gosh, I need 3/10 more dope or 3/10 less dope at 1,000 yards when the DA moves up or down 2,000s. So you, in essence, could have your dope on your rifle on a little spreadsheet. So if you can picture this, I don't put my dope on my buttstock because that's the worst place in the world to put it. Hey, you got to break off position to look at your dope. And if you wear glasses, you're holding your rifle 5 feet away from your face. What I do is I take my dope on a little card that's probably 1.5 inches wide by maybe 2 inches long. And it's a little spreadsheet that has 3 columns going down with rows going left to right. And the columns going down on the left side is yardage, the middle one is my dope, and the right one is my windage. So I can get down to 500 yards and scroll over at 500 yards. I need this dope and this wind at 10 mile an hour. That's what we usually base our wind on. So when I'm shooting in the field, I can just do a quick glance at the density altitude, and then with the newer programs, maybe the barometric pressure, I can make a small adjustment on the fly at 1,000 yards, and I can literally be engaging the target within seconds after looking at my dope. I don't have to turn on a computer. I don't have to walk around spinning a wind meter in the air. I don't have to turn on my iPad or my cell phone or get rid of 3 or 4 things or turn the brightness up or, all of these things that get involved. Once you get dope for your rifle, it's on the gun. It's on the gun. And you can even go to extreme. You could do a click chart at sea level, and just have it in the back of your logbook. That would cover you from negative 2,000 feet to 2,000 feet. Or you could do a click chart at 6,000 feet that would cover you from 4 to 8, 2,000 variance in density altitude. But do you see where I'm going with this? Your dope is data of previous engagements. It's information that you already know. It's nothing that you need to refer to a computer program for you to enter all these things and take all these snapshots and shake it, tap your head on top 3 times and spin around in 3 circles to the right, and then open your eyes and look and hope that the dope is right. That's not what they're for. This is what's plaguing most students. So much so that we've offered several classes this year. It's a 1-day class. It's a little bit of an advanced wind calling, and it's a dope class. And we only allow 4 students in the class because it's really going to take all day to do this with 4 students. But getting good information on the front end is priceless. And once you have your dope for your rifle, as long as you don't change anything like new bullets or a new load, it should stay pretty consistent for the life of that rifle until the barrel just completely gets shot out. And then let's talk about some of the programs out there and what we've used in the past. So I really like the standard Hornady program, the regular ballistics calculator, not the Ford-off. It holds really true. Now hit the advanced button so you can enter in your altitude and temperature and, barometric pressure, all that stuff. But in the last decade of the shooting school, this program came up. We used to use Sierra before that. And we've used some, there was a program called Patagonia. I don't know if some of you shooters remember this program. It's actually really expensive to buy. But what we've learned here, there was another, it was called BigGameInfo.com. They had a ballistics calculator. And the funny part is we could run these numbers on all these different ballistic calculators. Berger has one on their website. And we could take these same numbers that we just got from the student, and we could run in all these ballistic calculators, and they're all different. So these programmers are writing and they're putting in the information and weighting information that they feel is important. So some programs have altitude or density altitude as the weighted number that's going to make your dope go up and down. Other programs use barometric pressure. So you can go in and change the altitude up and down like crazy, and your dope doesn't change. It's weighted for station pressure. Vice versa. You have some programs that are weighted on altitude, not pressure. So you can change the pressure up and down all day, and it doesn't change your dope. You need to look and play with those to see which one is weighted in the program. So we've tried all these programs, and including this past year, we used a lot with the new Ford-off program, which I thought was really a cool step in the right direction. So the Ford-off program has this thing called a Coaxial Factor that they're able to sort of bend the bell curve to get your shots in line. So remember what I was talking about, we would go in and physically change the BC and the scope height and the speed ever so slightly to get our bell curve to line up. Hornady put this slider that where you could go, they had a baseline of 1, and you could drag it down to 0.99, 0.98, or you could go the other way. And basically you could bend the bell curve a little bit to try to get those 2 reference points to line up. and basically get the program to say what your rifle truly needs rather than what it thinks you need. However, though, it's my experience from last year that this has changed a couple times. I don't know if the program has updated. So I was really trying to get a feel for whether or not this is something that I could really use in the field. And I want you to know I don't rely on these programs in the field. I have dope for my rifle written down. It's usually tied to my rifle. But I may use these programs as a backup if the density altitude goes up or down a lot. I may open it up and just do a reference at 1,000 to see what it's making a difference in my dope for that day. I've learned from matches years past where PDAs were a big thing years ago. And I was shooting a 2 or 3 day sniper match with an individual. His name is Brian. And Brian was really proud of this PDA program he had that gave him all of his dope. I mean, just really high-end, cutting-edge technology. Well, we got to the top of this one stage. Some young kids went by on four-wheelers. This was one of those matches you had to carry all of your stuff. And they said, hey, guys, you want to throw your packs on the four-wheeler? We'll carry it to the top of the mountain for you. And we were like, oh, yeah, we could do that. So we threw our packs on, and, we're all happy-go-lucky not having to carry our packs at the top of the mountain. And when we get up there, we're getting ready to shoot. Brian flips his pack over, pulls out his PDA, and I hear, oh, shit. And I'm like, oh, that's not a good sign, right? It just so happened that his PDA broke. Unfortunately, with the kid throwing his pack off, somehow his PDA got damaged, and he no longer had dope for the match. And so I asked Brian, I said, hey, you have written dope for your rifle, right? And you could tell by the look on his face that the answer was no. And so it was a fantastic match for me because I had a personal spotter the whole time. I mean, it was just a fantastic match. Not so much for Brian. So I don't rely on these technology devices in the field because they do. They get broken. Sometimes they need to have signal to update. The batteries die. You forget it. It's back at camp and you're 6 miles walking back in and you don't have your cell phone or wind meter that has your dope in it. All of these things happen. At a match or at a hunt, my dope's tied to my rifle. I can guess the wind. Hell, I can even guess the distance and get it pretty close to a reasonable distance. But it doesn't do me any good if I don't have dope for my rifle. And so I always keep it tied to the bell. And how I do it is in front of my front scope ring, where the bell starts to get large and go into the front objective, I take a bread tie or a wire tie, and I'll take these 2 sheets of 1.5 by 2 inch pieces of paper. They're like little spreadsheets. You can waterproof them, have them laminated. I'll punch a little hole through them. I'll put them back to back. The first one is 1 through 600 in 25-yard increments. The second page is 600 through 1200 at 25-yard increments. And the only information on those are the distance, my dope, and the wind at 10 mile an hour. And so I can, while I'm looking at the target, somebody hollers out the distance, I can look down there and say, okay, 500 yards, this is my dope, this is my wind, and I can shoot. And I also go as far as to keep a backup copy of that in my logbook. So I carry my logbook everywhere I go. In my logbook, I actually keep a backup copy. I've ran obstacle courses and matches where things get banged around and your dope gets ripped off your rifle. I've walked through alder in Idaho. Great place to have your dope ripped off your rifle if you have it tied on like I do. So I always keep a backup copy just in case something like that happens. But I keep that dope with me, and that is my dope for my rifle. And then I'll use the other programs as backup. So let's go back to the Ford-Off program. I'm not quite sure what goes on behind the scenes with all these programs and programs writers, but I did notice that, I was really proud that, we've got our dope worked out to 1,000. I went to another match. I put in a new corrected barometric pressure. The Ford-Off program is really based off barometric pressure. And I actually had to move the slider quite a bit of a distance in the other direction and recorrect my dope for the data that I was getting in the field. It was wrong again. And so it just totally shattered my confidence in relying on something else, a computer, for example, to get something that I don't need. I know how to get my dope for my rifle. DOPE stands for data of previous engagements. That is you shooting and writing down what your rifle needed that day at that density altitude, at that barometric pressure. It's nothing that a computer can really give you accurately. And so it's after the shot you get this information, not before. I don't really rely on this, only because my experience shows that updates happen all the time. I've watched it with students for the last 3 or 4 years. I've watched it at big matches where guys are just missing over and under the targets constantly. And they're constantly playing with that program inside that unit that they're working with. And it's never exactly right. So, dope for your rifle, get the written distances, get some confirmations as to what your rifle really needs. Go back and manipulate the program to get it to say what you actually need and run with it from there. Use all the computer models and all the programs as a backup or a reference, but don't rely on it to give you your dope at a match or at a hunt. Now, if you have any questions on this, please feel free to give me a call. Please feel free to shoot me an email. This is something I think it's going to be a while until it really works itself out. So we want to talk about a couple Q&As. So we had a couple questions that we want to go over here at the end of the podcast. The first one's from Paul Murphy. So Paul had asked, what type of rifles do we use here at the shooting school for school rifles? And we use custom rifles, of course. They are the BT and BTE actions. And we use a couple different stocks. All of the stocks that we use here have adjustable length of pulls, adjustable cheek pieces, because we get individuals coming through the school that are 6'6", 5'6", and 4'6". So we want to be able to adjust the rifles accordingly to the students so they can be fitted properly. And then this year and last year, they were in 6.5 Creedmoor. And so the 6.5 Creedmoor, we shoot factory ammunition, which is fantastic ammunition to begin with from Hornady. And just a great caliber for distance. Not heavy recoiling, great ballistics, lots of fun to shoot, and you can spot your shots on target. They also have a full-length Picatinny rail. That Picatinny rail allows us to slide the scope inside, leaving the rings attached, back and forth a couple notches to fit to the proper alignment for the student. So sometimes students are a little bit taller, a little bit shorter, and we do have to move the scope forward or back a little bit to adjust the eye relief on that. So all of our rifles, of course, have the built-in Picatinny rail. And last but not least, last year we used all Collis, and this year's the same. And so we use the MSR reticle and the skimmer is what will be on the school rifles for this year. We may end up with a tangent data here very shortly to give that a try as well. Now, another question, just real quick. We had a question from Charles Newton, and he had asked about the 300 and 6.5 PRC and whether or not they are truly built for a short action. That is a great question. We are actually working on that caliber right now, the 6.5 PRC. So far, all the testing has shown that the rifle shoots lights out. I have always said that the parent case, the 7mm short action Ultra Mag, was the better case design between that and the WSM. And, the Wildcatters were necking it down to the 6.5, and I'm really excited to see that go mainstream. So far, initial testing has shown that this is going to be a great caliber. Accuracy-wise, it's been stellar. Recoil is very mild. Ballistics, fantastic. To answer your question, though, no. It requires some modifications. So the factory ammunition on the 6.5 PRC shooting 147 grain ELD is loaded to 2.950. That is too long to feed out of a short action Accuracy International magazine. That is too long actually to feed through some of the different short action actions. So what we're working on here is cutting a small little slot on the bottom of the action, since there is a magazine that will feed these, and it's called the American Rifle Company. So we have a magazine that will take a 2.950 round like the 6.5 PRC, and then what we have to do is make a small slot, since these are center feed magazines, in the bottom of the short action to allow the round to feed up through properly and feed. So it does require some modifications, and it does require a special magazine. Hornady has really loaded these things long. The exception to this is if you hand load. If you hand load, you can seat the bullet deeper into the case and shorten that overall length of the cartridge up and get it to feed out of an AI magazine perfectly fine. So to answer that question is it's sort of yes to both. If you're hand loading, absolutely perfect. If you're not hand loading, then maybe some small modifications need to be made, as well as a specific magazine or two that's out there to load that long of a cartridge in a short action caliber. So, hope you enjoyed the podcast here. Again, feel free to leave us some feedback. Always drop us a line, shoot us an email if you have some questions on anything that we talked about. This subject in particular is near and dear. It is such an Achilles heel to a new shooter to have really good, true working dope for your rifle. So I'm just really hoping that I can help you get that ironed out faster, easier, and correctly. That way you can actually go out and enjoy shooting rather than wanting to throw your rifle out the window on your way home from the range in frustration. And again, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you tuning in. We always appreciate your feedback. Please feel free to give us a call, drop us an email, anything we can help with. And then also, if you have any questions that you would like us to address here on the show, or interviews or people you would like us to talk to, please send that to us. And if we use it on the air, we will send you a free t-shirt as our way of saying thanks. So again, thanks for joining us. My name is Jamie Dotson, your host, and you are listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.